We are going to disassemble a clutch assembly. First thing first, the snap ring needs to come out so I can get my clutches out. Snap ring is removed. Now I can take out my pressure plate. I've got a cushion spring. Can you see how wavy this thing is? This cushion spring is there for when the piston applies and all the clutches get smushed together. This makes it so there's a little bit of time for the clutches to slip on one another as that application is happening. If this type of thing wasn't in there, it'd be like similar to if we put a shift kit in a car and it slammed into every single gear. This makes it so that the gear shift has a tiny, milliseconds worth of slippage, but makes it so it's a lot more comfortable. It also doesn't put as much stress on any of the mechanical components because they're not being jarred around as much. A little slip and now we're nice and into that gear. My first steel, you can see how that's a lot thinner than that pressure plate was. And that steel is going to have a friction. And this friction just has a paper style of friction material bonded onto it. And the glue that holds this on is water soluble. So if we get any kind of water into the transmission, anything with a clutch material like this on it needs to be replaced. Torque converter, clutches, any electrical components need to be. And the most likely cause of getting water into a transmission, honestly, is if the cooler goes bad and we get coolant into the transmission fluid. So here's my stack of clutches and steels. The reason we have as many of these is if I can get if I can hold 20 foot-pounds with this clutch here, 2 steels around 1 friction material, and you see how the friction material is double-sided. If I can hold 20 foot-pounds with one of them, then as I continue to add more and more and more, so in this case, instead of just one, I got 1, 2, 3, then this one, instead of 20, would be able to hold 60 foot-pounds of torque. You see what I'm saying? We're just stacking our clutches on top of each other. Each one's adding a little bit more holding capacity. And at the bottom of this, I've got this other, what looks like a steel, except for on the other side it's got this domed shape to it. And the reason it has this dome shape to it is because of the way in which my return spring is shaped. This is a Belleville spring. They call it a Belleville spring because it's domed. It's kind of like a bowl right now, but we call it a bell shape. And this Belleville spring is what actually physically forces this piston, the aluminum piece here, the piston back into the drum. So it applies and comes out, and then when it retracts, it gets forced back in by this spring. There's tension on it right now, right? Because the normal state for this clutch is going to be unapplied. So we need some way to take tension off so that I can get this snap ring out of there. In walks a special tool. These legs are going to push on the spring. You can see them in there like that. And then on the other end, I've got a threaded rod and a nut. I got this piece that fits on there and holds everything still. Many different special tools for many different transmissions. Some are a little more universal than others. Just going to take a moment and make sure I'm all centered up nicely. Alright, then I'll tighten this up to relieve tension. You see it made me mean it. And then I'm going to look for my gap, which I put in the wrong spot. So we'll loosen her back up. spin it a little bit. There we go. Now my gap's in an easy to get to place. Easy is good. They're all centered up again. Best we can anyway. All right, back to tightening. All right, and we'll see what happens.